Good day, everyone. I am Eileen Tambuli, the first reporter. Welcome you all to Chapter 11. This chapter discusses the nature of sexuality and distinguishes between preferences or orientation and behavior. This chapter also discusses the sexual norms that regulate heterosexual activity as well as the major types of deviance from those norms. Chapter goes: understand the dynamics of sex norms, learn about different forms of heterosexual deviance, be able to describe aspects of prostitution, and understand the aspects of pornography. Sexual norms. Men and women, just two genders, right? No. Gender is in-binary, but our society has set of assumptions, sexual norms that affect how people think men and women should behave. It's not just how we perceive each other, but also how we feel. We must conform to restrictive and sometimes harmful standards. Sexual behavior is a normative behavior. It is governed by norms that regulate socially acceptable practices and general orientation. Traditional religious beliefs have powerfully influenced those norms. Just like premarital sex, traditional and religious beliefs, premarital sex is not acceptable, especially in religion. It is a sin. But why people still doing this inappropriate doing? It is just for fun or curiosity. Symbolic communication. People learn norms governing sexual behavior through interaction of socialization with other people. It might be we learn from our families, friends, or in school. Sexual relationships offer more than physical gratification to participants. They also fulfill desire for physical contact and communication. Sexual behavior encompasses a variety of acts made up of combination of participants, situation, and statuses. Objection to sexual activity, sodomy, and sadomasochism. Sodomy is an oral or oral copulation with same or opposite sex. Deviating from social norms, law prohibition and laws, social reaction, stigmas from mass media, discourage sexuality expression. Laws and explicit groups' position may reflect the contents of sexual norms revealed by public expression, such as stigma promoted through the mass media, informal sanctioning efforts by individuals to promote discouraged sexuality. According to Delameter 1981, judgment of sexual deviation consider a few important characteristics. Number 1, the degree of consent, such as norms that prohibit forcible rape. Arousal does not equate consent. 2, the identities of the participants, such as norms that restrict legitimate sexual partners to human beings and exclude animals. 3, relationship between participants, such as norms that restrict legitimate sex partners to people in certain age ranges and with acceptability kinship bond. 4, certain kinds of acts and conduct. Some acts might hurt and which is inappropriate. 5, the setting in which sex acts occur in school, house, hotel, and etc.
For this week's lesson, let's talk about the selected forms of heterosexual deviance. And clearly, the meaning of sexual deviance varies in different situations. Society nowadays, or even before, may or may not regard sexual intercourse between a male and a female as a deviant behavior depending on factors such as the ages of the partners, their marital status, and the time and place of the act. Heterosexual deviance includes acts such as premarital and extramarital sex and prostitution. It simply means that the strength of one observer's perception of sexual deviance in a given act depends on the strength of the norm governing that behavior. Extramarital sex refers to sexual behavior by a married person with someone who is not his or her spouse. In 18 BC, Emperor Augustus turned his attention to social problems at Rome. With this, extravagance and adultery were widespread. Among the upper classes, marriage was increasingly infrequent, and many couples who did marry failed to produce offspring. Augustus, who hoped thereby to elevate both the morals and the numbers of the upper classes in Rome and to increase the population of native Italians in Italy, and enacted laws to encourage marriage and having children, including a provision establishing adultery as a crime. The law against adultery made the offense a crime punishable by exile and confiscation of the property. Fathers were permitted to kill daughters and their partners in adultery. Husbands could kill the partners under the certain circumstances and were required to divorce adulterous wives. One report described a careful distinction by married people who were having affairs between dating relationships and sexual ones. These participants associated in the term cheating with sex but not with dating relationships. However, the participants would also not inform their spouses of the relationships, despite of the lack of sexual involvement, suggesting that they anticipated negative reactions. Heterosexual deviance among the young age categories: 29 years of age and younger. More females than males reported involvement in extramarital affairs. A different survey that year found out and reported that 30% of the men and 20% of the women in a sample couples married 10 or more years reported having participated in at least one affair. The reasons for engaging in extramarital affairs vary by different gender. Interpretation remains difficult, however, because none of these estimates, including census, reflects answers from random samples of the population.
Sex in the computer. New forms of sexual activity have accompanied changes in technology and lifestyle as reflected in these examples. Heightened concerns over sexually transmitted diseases can lead some people to experiment with new forms of sex. First is phone sex. Phone sex is a more recent variation of techniques to provide remote sexual stimulation either within or outside marriage. By calling such service and paying a fee, one gains access to another person to discuss one's own sexual fantasies or to hear sexy talk from a stranger. The parties exchange no commitments, they feel no need to perform or play unwanted roles, they need not to exchange in foreplay and physical contact, they take no risk of contracting sexually transmitted diseases including AIDS. As personal computer system equipped with communications hardware and software became widely available, people gained capabilities for quick, private communication, also called as servers. It is the ability to communicate with other computers, functions as a reservoir of informations. Some servers contain sexually oriented messages exchanged between computer users or digital pictures of pornography. Cybersex. Observers coined the term cybersex to denote the use of computers to flirt, exchange romantic messages, and even acquire sexual satisfactions, all online. People do develop relationships over the internet. Participants in cybersex usually meet in chat rooms on the internet. In the course of these conversations, in cybersex, two or more participants type descriptions of emotional reactions and behavior to others. It is similar to phone sex, but there can be an added element of video through the use of web cameras. The porn industry is thriving. There are a number of reasons for this, and they appear to revolve around the extensive and expanded use of the internet. First, it appears that porn websites are more adept at getting and keeping customers. The use of multiple styles of advertising, a tolerance for pop-ups and other gimmicks that are shunned by conventional sites helps to generate interest in the site. Second, porn sites will cooperate with each other. Other sites are not regarded as competition but as potential allies. If one site doesn't have what a potential customer wants, they can be channeled to another site that does. It helps business to have links to so-called rival sites. But you won't find a link on the J.C. Penney's website to redirect customers to Sears. Third, the pornography industry has been technologically sophisticated. Websites are regularly upgraded and broadband increased to make it easier and quicker for their customers to enter sites that are heavily graphic. Fourth, new websites featuring a different kind of sexual stimulation can be created very quickly, especially compared to the delays found in the magazine production. Once a website developer learns there is a market for, say, sexy people sitting on John Deere tractors, all you need is a digital camera, some models, and a former acquaintance. Sex work and prostitution. There are a number of different kinds of sex work, including exotic dancing, erotic massage, escort services, telephone sex operations, prostitution, and any other type of work that deals with impersonal sexual activity. Sex work highlights the commercialized the nature of some forms of sex, while prostitution, on the other hand, is the exchange sex for money. A basic definition of prostitution identifies it as a promiscuous and mercenary sexual behavior with emotional indifference between the partners. Some regard prostitution as a dehumanizing indulgence and a gross violation of the laws of nature, while others regard it merely as an alternative occupation that may actually perform a useful service to society. Prostitutes do exchange sex for money, but varying definition of sex might lead people to include other activities in the same category, such as acting in a sexually explicit movies, visiting a sex therapist with one spouse, and paying for a sex massage. Prostitution also shares some characteristics with forcible rape. Both illicit sex-related behavior both involve brutality along with sex itself, and both can occur in an atmosphere of humiliation of female participants. Nature and extent. The basic idea of prostitution involves exchanges of sex for money. Only the client's imagination and financial resources limit the available range of sexual acts. Clients, of course, want as much as they can get for the smallest price possible. Prostitutes effectively operate businesses. They share the attitude of most business people: time is money. While arrest data provides some statistical indicators and suggests some relationships, they prove notoriously poor indicators of numbers of prostitutes actually operating. Police arrest some prostitutes only once, while they frequently haul others to jail several times. Moreover, they arrest some prostitutes under charges other than solicitation, such as vagrancy, disorderly conduct, loitering, and other sex offenses. International dimensions for sex work. International variations of sex work expand on the forms prostitution commonly known in the United States. Organizations or individuals may coerce women or persuade them with offers of money, or just kidnap them against their will and then send them to other countries. These traffickers resell women to private parties as sexual slaves or to others who run prostitution services for their own profit. Some women, particularly widowed from poor countries such as India and Southeast Asian nations, may see prostitution as an opportunity to make money for their families. In Thailand, many child prostitutes work unwillingly in a large and booming sex industry. The country has gained reputation for extensive child prostitution, and many visiting business people, tourists, and other foreigners ask about their practice. Child prostitution is common in Pakistan. Even though the country is very conservative and deeply Muslims, young girls are frequently seen soliciting clients in public places, and the police are powerless to act unless an arrest is authorized by the judge. In Germany, which legalized it in 2002, prostitutes is just another job. In Sudan, on the other hand, seems related to modernization process, uprooted individuals from rural society and freed them from traditional restraints on prostitution. Prostitution also increased in Turkey after opening its border with the former Soviet Union.
Types of prostitutes. One can classify prostitutes according to their methods of operation, the degree of privacy their work allows them, and their incomes. Three major kinds of prostitutes. Streetwalker, the most common type of prostitute, solicits directly for clients in a relatively public place, such as street corner or bus station, often provide the cheapest available prostitution services. Bar girl also solicits clients in a public place, but one that offers more protection from a public view than a street corner allows. A bar girl's success usually depends more on physical attractiveness than that of a street walker, because she must build up business from the relatively small number of potential clients who visits the tavern. Call girl. This type of prostitution also suits part-time work better than other types. They enjoy the highest status of any type of prostitute. She works out of an apartment or hotel room and takes clients strictly through referrals from known and trusted sources. There are also kinds of prostitutes who work in business offices, but they nevertheless use sex to further their economic ends. Party girls have sex with the clients for money. Mistresses form sexual relationships with their bosses motivated by the desire to ensure job security. Career climber extend the idea by forming continuing sexual relationship with a series of bosses in an effort to promote her own career mobility and advancement. Prostitution and deviant street networks. This network reflect links among people engaged in a number of illicit activities or hustle prostitution among them. Other network activities might include petty theft, forgery, credit card fraud, embezzlement, drug trafficking, burglary, and robbery. The prostitutes work their own hustles, including selling sex within these networks. They engage in whatever activity seems likely at the time to yield the most income. Becoming a prostitute. Hollywood has provided a caricature of prostitution in the form of the happy hooker myth. In this myth, a prostitute is a sexy, pretty woman who freely enters prostitution until the right man comes along. They enjoys high income, freedom, attention, and high earnings. But the myth does not approach the reality of the lives of great majority of prostitutes. Youth and some physical attractiveness do play important roles in the success of a prostitute. So most are between the ages of 17 and 24 or so. They reach their peak earning ages probably around 22. Some older women continue to work as prostitute, but most of them remain in the activity for special reasons, such as raising funds for drug addiction, alcoholism, or some other expensive habit. Most prostitutes appear to come primarily from the lower socioeconomic classes, many from inner city areas. Still, no evidence indicates that they enter this profession simply to escape poverty, although most share a desire to improve their economic position. Child prostitutes or baby pros, Bracy 1979, participate in a little understood studied area of prostitution. In Shardy's 1984 study of child prostitutes aged 8 to 12 has indicated that the girls often receive their introduction to this activity through their parents or other family members. None of the girls work full-time as prostitutes and all were attending elementary schools at that time. None were runaways and their backgrounds frequently include casual nudity, sexual promiscuity, pornography, and prostitution by family members. Adolescent prostitutes. Adolescent prostitutes generally begin their careers at about the age of 14. Most come from dysfunctional homes marked by family separation, divorce, conflict, weak parental affection, and substantial sexual abuse. They generally continued their involvement because they earned a lot of money. Also, many seem to fear rejection by their families if they stop, especially those whose parents were involved in producing pornography. These children run away from home to escape physical abuse, neglect, or other undesirable family conditions and then become prey for pimps or other criminals who divert the children for their own illegal purposes.
Prostitution as a career. In order to fully participate in the life, a potential prostitute must learn the trade from others who know how it works. Most girls who eventually become prostitute began to associate with other prostitutes or pimps only after they became sexually active and had previously explored the idea of selling sexual services. The career of a call girl includes at least 3 developmental stages. First, entrance into the career. Second, apprenticeship. Provide little instruction in sexual techniques, or some women report spending an average of 2 or 3 months working in others' apartments in training situations. Third, development of contacts. The mere desire to become a cool girl does not want to attain this status. Instead, one needs training and a systematic arrangement for contacts. Exchanging sex for drug. Changes in the availability and use of drugs have brought the related changes in prostitution practices in some areas. Evidences for this trend comes out not only from impressionistic reports of growing numbers of such trades, but also from wider reports of new selling patterns emerging over time. Prostitutes who exchange sex for drugs often think of themselves as freer than those who work for pimps. Self-concept. Prostitution requires a new conception of oneself. Societal reactions, arrest, and association with other prostitutes promote change in the prostitute's self-concept. Research has found a relationship between self-image of urban prostitute and the extent of her social isolation. Especially isolated women tend to view their behavior in a more acceptable light. Prostitute supports their favorable self-concept, particularly by regarding clients as legitimate targets for exploitation. After beginning in prostitution, these women tend to develop attitudes and behavior patterns that contribute to their social role. Prostitution and AIDS. AIDS is increasingly transmitted by heterosexual contact. Most of prostitutes who contract AIDS, those who buy using drug, and many believe that they can avoid AIDS through regular use of condoms. Studies have identified the great danger for prostitutes, other than their drug use, in sexual relation with high-risk non-paying partners with whom they have formed romantic attachment, weakening their resolve to use condom, saying, "I can't use a condom with my BF. What will he think? That I'm gonna charge him next?" An Australian prostitute noted. Organization. There are a number of international organizations for sex workers. Most of groups are concerned with the working conditions and human rights of sex workers. First, the Coyote, or Call of Your Old Tired Ethics. This organization attempted to change public attitudes toward prostitute by calling of disassociating prostitute from its historical link with sin and crime, decriminalization of the practice. Coyote identified an important goal while substituting an image of prostitute as a kind of work and a behavior, with a graphic accounts of women restrained by their customer in chains and ropes, burned with cigarettes by their pimps, and generally worthy of civil rights protection. Next is Whisper, or Women Hurt in System of Prostitution Engaged in Revolt. This organization depicts the downside of a prostitution, degraded sexually for money they need in order to live.
Pornography. The word pornography derives from the Greek word porn, which referred originally to the prostitutes and their trade. Pornography no longer relates strictly to the descriptions of the behavior of prostitutes and their clients. The concept has broadened to include virtually and sexually explicit material. Some pornography displays a violent quality, including certain recurring themes such as sexual slavery. Pornographic depictions appear in motions of pictures, written works such as books, and magazine articles and newer media. Social and political concern over the potential for harmful effects of obscenity, a legal term, and pornography, a popular term, has built over time. Professionals use highly technical language when they discuss sex. Others of us escape by using euphemism or by not talking about sex at all. Direct and open conversation about sex between parent and child is too rare in our society. Failure to talk openly and directly about sex has several consequences. It overemphasizes sex, give it a magical, non-natural quality, making it more attractive and fascinating. It diverts the expression of sexual interest out of the legitimate channels. Such failure makes teaching children and adolescents to become channels for transmitting sexual information and forces people to use clandestine and unreliable sources. Social regulation of pornography. One can find examples of explicit sexual references intended to entertain or arouse audience in many forms is created by diverse societies throughout history. Greek and Roman mosaic poetry and drama, Indian writings such as Kama Sutra, medieval ballads, and poems. Changing technology allowed increasingly economical printing, thereby increasing the availability of printed materials to the masses. Sexually explicit materials that once achieved only limited circulation began to reach wider audience.
So pornography. Pornography in our everyday life, well defined as the sexualized domination, degradation, and objectification of women and girls and social groups who are put in the domain feminine rule or is in reality a prevalent mainstream worldview. People in United States and in other Western nations experience many sexually explicit materials in everyday life. Mass media outlets such as films, novels, television shows, periodicals, and newspaper graphically portray sexual image and behavior today that never appeared in those media in earlier times. The uses actors and actresses are drawn to this type of work for a variety of reasons, according to Seymour and Gaze in 2006. Like prostitution, some actresses earn quite a bit of money, but most make meager wages. Many of the establishments offered prostitution services on site. Their owners often carried on other related businesses, including publishing a sex tabloid that carried explicit personal advertisement, managing a massage parlor, and running an escort service. Now let's go to the effect of pornography. The effects of pornography, we have two types. First is the direct effects, and second one is the indirect effects. Direct effects might include arousal of the pornography's audience and changes in their behavior that result from exposure to it and might expose to sex crimes like rape, while indirect effect would include subtitle long-term changes caused by exposure to pornography, such as redefinition of sexual object or sexual accessibility. Well, we have another which is might divorce the context for sexual relation from partners, emotion, and feelings. Some see a substantial long-term danger that pornography tend to reduce sex to a purely physical act rather than a component in a richer human relationship. Let's go to the harmful effects. Some of these materials also follow a recurrent storyline of a man making some sort of sexual advance to a woman. It also might promote attitudes that perpetuate the rape myth. This according to General's Commission on Pornography in 1986. This rape might holds that women say no, but really mean yes. Therefore, men can really justified in acting upon the woman's refusal of sex as an indication of willingness. Most pornography depicts women in a degrading manner. It shows sexual partners, usually women, solely as tools for the sexual satisfaction of men. As a consequence of exposure to such materials, viewers, particularly young ones, may define both women and sexual behavior in general in a callous manner that objectifies women and removes the emotional content of sex, according to Weaver in 1992. So now let's go to the positive or potentially beneficial function of pornography. The continuing presence of pornography in modern society suggests to some sociologists that it serves an important social and personal function. Exposure to pornography may even encourage healthy behavior and prevent crime. For example, criminals first view picture of intercourse at ages several years older than non-criminal. Other studies suggest that sex criminals come disproportionately frequently from sexually restrictive families. As a result, they often receive less information and exposure to sexual subjects than other people get. Rapists in particular seems to have come unusually frequently from sexual repressive environments. The availability of pornography, including violent pornography, is not necessarily related to aggressive criminality as a forcible rape. The more subtle effect of pornography, including the imagery of women, sex, and physical relationship without emotional context, may represent its most important consequences because they persist for long periods of time, according in 1982 of Weaver and its sins.